All right, everybody, welcome to the Community Spotlight. We're here with another edition, and this week, a few weeks ago, I should say, your votes rather decisively picked Sly Cooper 1, but our runner Zenthro unfortunately got very sick, so we had to delay it. So today we're going to make good on that vote, and we've got Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus 100%, who's going to be run by Zenthro and joined by Romo on commentary. Before we get started with the run, though, I have a few quick announcements to go over about upcoming GDQ stuff. There is going to be no sprint tomorrow. They will be back on the 24th. This Wednesday, the Cuso Grande Invitational is wrapping up with the grand finals. So if you want to see the finals of the Bad Video Game Tournament, the special invitational that we've been holding on our channel, tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Randomizer Week starts this Saturday with Super Mario RPG and Crystallis beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, and after that, we're going to have a Luigi's Mansion Anniversary show at 6 p.m. Eastern as well. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up for everyone. Make sure you tune in for all of that. And Zenthro, Ramo, hello, how are you both doing?
A lot better. It's nice not feeling sick for the first time in a week.
Congrats then. Nice that you're doing well now.
So why don't you tell us about Sly Cooper? So this is a collectathon, basically, right?
Essentially, the first game is it's kind of like a collectathon platformer, a la like Crash Bandicoot. Every level has a key, which is kind of like a relic. It has bottles to collect, which are essentially boxes, and then it has time trial in this game as well, for the most part. There are a few levels we'll get into that don't have time trials, they just have keys.
Slide 2, in particular, is a open world adventure game, which is kind of different from Slide 1.
Yeah, and I know there's a couple different versions of this game. Which one are you playing on, and what differences are between the versions?
So there are differences between all three of the PS2 releases, like the three different regions. I'm playing on the North American version of the game, so NTSCU, and essentially that just allows us to do all of the proxies that we're going to be doing, really high launches via crevices and such. If you know Spyro, you know the term proxy, essentially. And on PAL, there's a few of these that don't work the exact same way. But for the most part, we've either found ways around that. So you can do pretty much every category on PAL as well. And then on the Japanese release of the game, they actually fixed some of the tricks we're going to be doing, where we load the game to skip a cutscene or load the game to just do various things. They kind of fixed this, unfortunately. So that's why we choose to play on the North American version. It's the most optimal. I'm playing it on a backwards compatible PlayStation 3, and that's just loads and resets are faster. We'll get more into that when it actually comes up, so as to have downtime to explain it.
No problem. Is there anything about the run that you would like to go over before we start as a preface to what we're going to be seeing today?
I don't know if we have anything to go over explaining the run wise, but I think it was very important to explain what you're seeing right now, which is we're going to be starting the run from a loaded file, and that's quite different than you're probably used to with speedruns. And normally a lot of runs start from just straight new game. We decided on this about a year and a half ago to allow this, as setting up a file this way allows us to skip every animated cutscene in the game without altering anything else. The run still starts from the same spot. We have very strict requirements on what the file should look like, so that way nobody has an advantage over anybody else, and it just takes away all the nonsense speed bumps essentially of the run.
All right. So if that's about it, I'm good to go when you are. So why don't you give us a countdown?
Alrighty, we'll go on go. So 3, 2, 1, go. Now, right off the bat, Remo, if you want to explain a little bit about the tutorial area and why it's completely irrelevant, that would be great.
Oh, we will see that in about 5 seconds here, since they did not extend a damage barrier to cover up that ledge, so we can just jump across it and down to this alley here and final destination, which is the team van, and escape Paris without doing the tutorial level. Here, Zen is going to skip one of the animated cutscenes by basically mashing triangle button because we have done the little setup.
Quick and easy. And we're right into the run. It's great.
There, Zen did it again.
If you hadn't done the file prep and to allow you to skip those cutscenes, how much longer would that segment be?
That segment alone is 3 minutes and 23 seconds extra just from watching cutscenes.
And we'll be doing that a few times more throughout the run, and that is going to add up to about 7 minutes and 10 seconds, pretty much. Around that. Here, Zen has collected now the first 4 clue bottles in the run. And we'll be collecting a lot of those. As you can see, there is a counter on the top right corner. This level has 20 bottles. It can vary from 20 to 40. We are playing. This is the first level in the game, the first full level. And very basic stuff. There we get the first checkpoint, and now Zen is going to perform a cutscene skip via a death abuse.
So essentially, every Binocucom cutscene in the game, the ones that have Sly and Bentley in the corners talking to each other, you can skip those either by loading the game or by dying after the Binocucom has been opened up, because it essentially counts the cutscene as having been watched on the first frame that the cutscene starts.
Nice job so far, Sly. To get over the next gate, you'll need to grab onto this hook using your cane.
So this game came out in 2002, as you can see from there, and the first game by Sucker Punch to produce on this platform, which was PlayStation 2. A lot of great titles since, and this is like their first main success, pretty much, Sly 1.
So these bottles that we're collecting, they allow us to unlock these things called vaults. And the vaults are going to give us power-ups. And one of the most common questions that we get asked a lot when running 100% is, why don't you get some of the late game power-ups first, and then come back and do everything else later? And the power-ups are actually unlocked in a sequential order. So the first power-up you get is always the same, and the 7th power-up you get is always the same. There's only one thing that interrupts this sequential flow, and that's the 3rd vault that you unlock in a specific hub world. We'll give you the blueprints to that hub world, which just shows you where all the bottles are and the breakable objects, if you're having some trouble finding the rest of them.
Now Zen is going to go back to this level, despite he actually exited already. The end of the level faster, and we can use a mapping technique to get out of that level very fast and spawn at the center of the hub.
There's a lot of creative routing. Remo here has actually come in to the community, I want to say recently, but it's actually been a couple of months now, and come up with even more creative routing for ways to skip these vault animations as much as we can, and just do things more optimally.
I was surprised, impressed, and overwhelmed at the same time with the routing possibilities of this category, because they are immense.
Yes. There's actually a faster route than the one that I'm currently using today that would save, it's about another 10 seconds, right, in this hub world?
Oh yeah.
Where you do some levels in a completely different order, but it's a little scary, and I tend to forget things that are new, so
So, since this category is 100%, what is required for you to collect during this run?
So the
Main
100. Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, Raymond. You're good.
The main collectibles in this game are the bottles. Bottles, you open vaults, and when you open a vault in a certain level, that unlocks a possibility to complete a Master Thief sprint, which basically is the time trial. So, to the percentage, the total things that are counted towards it are unlocked levels, opened vaults, completed Master Thief sprints, and completed bosses. And that's all there is.
Yeah, so an interesting thing there is unlocking the level. Normally in games, simply entering a level doesn't really matter. However, in this game, we must enter every level, and this actually comes up later on in the 5th hub world, where it's actually faster to completely skip a portion of the game and then come back to it because we have to get that last percentage point.
The part of the interesting routing in this category.
And in this level, just 2 little pieces of movement tech that I wanted to go over that I didn't think about right away. Whenever you are latching on to like a rope kind of like climb thing, where Sly puts his cane in his mouth and is like walking on the pipes and stuff, you can actually jump off of those, and when you press circle to latch onto it, you can jump the first like half second that you land on it and kind of keep your height and just chain those together to move faster. And then there's another thing where if you jump and hold towards a wall, you can get what's called a slope jump, and this essentially just gives your first jump more speed and height. That's the only reason that I was able to actually climb this little cogwheel right here. You'll see me do it again.
Yes, and in addition to that, we just opened the second vault. This gives us an ability called Roll, which has a lot of interesting properties to it and physics to it, to the use of it. So basically Zen is using it here on a solid straight platform, or like steady platform ground, because using Roll and running speed. And speed of it works is that it can generate huge amounts of speed when going downhill, and it really can't go that quickly uphill. Bonks on these little platforms that you can see then just kind of stopping the roll animation for a bit to go, because the roll distracted by those little platforms that normal running would not interfere with in any way.
Yeah, roll by far my favorite ability in the game, but it certainly has its quirks about it.
Okay.
So here you'll see another. I'm gonna constantly harp on it because I absolutely love this category and how crazy the routing can get. Here the vault is actually at the very beginning of the level, so we're gonna come down here all the way to the end and grab all these bottles, and we're gonna use the fact that the game auto-saves automatically when you break a key and collect the key to save the game and essentially skip some free menuing and then load back to the start to go and get the vault that's at the beginning. And you'll see that a few times throughout the game.
Roll times, and it's just because the vault animations, we call it watching the page, a lot of time.
Yes. Every vault, without the page length, so like the part where Bentley explains what the power-up is, that was interesting. But anyway, there's, I think it's 16 or 17 seconds of stuff that you're required to watch on top of Bentley explaining what power-up you're getting. So, these animations can take up to 30 plus seconds. So if it's even if it's only faster by a second or two to skip them, we're gonna take that advantage.
Yeah. And only thing that varies for every vault, how long watching it takes, is the page length dialogue that Bentley gives when opening the vault. Explains what the vault has been. This is also a little thing with the routing, since all these page length times, we can kind of manipulate the order where we open the vaults. Extra bit of times and points of the run.
And that's one of the things that Remo actually helped out with. He's kind of come in and made it so we watch the pages that, like, sometimes it just doesn't work out and you just cannot skip a vault. It'll just always be slower. So it'll be better to put a page that's shorter on that vault that you don't really have a choice but to watch it. And Remo's kind of come in and helped us figure some things out there. He's really the routing guru, so to speak, of the Sly community.
Yes. It's kind of a mantle, but there are other people with different kind of roles too in the community. Since has a lot of people in general participating in optimizing stuff.
I'm unbeatable.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite thing about our community is pretty much everybody is just always willing to help out with stuff. And like any idea for a potential time save, even if it seems like on paper it might be the dumbest thing in the world to suggest, it always suggests things. I mean, you never know what could have just been overlooked for years.
Exactly. Here once again Zen skipped one of the cutscenes by loading the game. Here we're gonna see the roll gain momentum it can generate downhill right there.
If you stay still inside the barrel, the guard won't be able to see you.
Yeah, so roll also affects your airspeed. If you hold it and hold just a specific direction, you'll actually fall a little bit faster as well. Which I feel like we don't utilize that enough. I feel like we could probably use that more.
So this is Cunning Disguise, and for this level on the first playthrough we are only going to collect the vault, not even the key, which would normally be the standard for completing a level. Since we can utilize skips used in other categories such as any % to basically make the need for World 1 and 2 keys on the first playthrough not necessary.
Yeah, so traditionally in any % you would see abusing a guard's like his damage box, hitting the wall and breaking that generator from behind. Unfortunately, it's not faster to utilize that in this category. Since we're right here, that guard doesn't spawn coming out of that level, so it's easier to just, unlock it manually. However, since it's faster to delay some of these keys, I will be using the cannon early super jump, which we'll explain in a couple minutes.
This level will be same in the structure as the previous one. We're only gonna collect the vault from this level as well.
I promise to do my best to not trigger any alarms. I know they are very annoying and very loud,
Well,
but I can make no promises.
Yeah, the developers sure made it so that the player does not want to trigger them.
Unfortunately, there I have to trigger that alarm. There's no other way to get those bottles. But and sometimes you have to make necessary sacrifices for the sake of speed.
It's very true.
Is there any penalty for triggering the alarms besides just the awful noise?
There's one.
Yeah.
Mm.
Go ahead. You're fine.
In Master Thief sprints. Otherwise, we don't care about them. Except that, of course, we can die from when those spotlights are red and such. But in Master Thief sprints, the time tick down on the timer twice as fast when the alarms are triggered, and it accumulates when you trigger 2 alarms at the same time, go down 4 times faster than normal speed.
Yeah, so it can get pretty spooky when you're
Yeah.
doing some of these sprints, because some of them, even in the speed run, even with the fastest possible movement that we can do, some of them get kind of scary. Like, they get really, really close.
So this level here is called Treasure in the Depths, but in our community we call this simply as crabs, since that is the idea of the game. This is the first level we complete that only has... There's no vault, there's no Master Thief sprint, this is simply a minigame. And there are RNG elements in this minigame, but they are not like major. Sometimes failing might be inevitable, and how crabs spawn as well. But since the arena is so small, it's not a big deal.
How does
Yeah, it's
failing
really nice.
happen?
Did you say how failing happened?
Yeah, how do you fail this minigame?
So if one of the crabs escapes through these tunnels that they're spawning through, like that, the chest is no longer in the game. So you're essentially locked out from completing the minigame. So you want to make sure that they don't sneak away with any of them. It's very terrifying.
Yeah, that came a little close.
Yeah. Fortunately, this is really early on in the run. So even though it has the worst possible floor for bad RNG, where you can straight up just be in a position where it's completely unwinnable, it's super early, so you don't really lose too much if that does end up happening. However, it's super rare when that happens, so...
Here's then performed the cannon skip, and we're essentially gonna enter the first boss without having all the keys you have in order to enter it.
Now, Remo, I said I was playing the PS2 version of the game. Why did that look like a PS3 menu?
Because you are playing on a backwards compatible PlayStation 3.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
So yeah, backwards compatible PlayStation 3 makes resets faster that we use in order to skip the boss intro cutscenes that are very long.
Yes.
So loads are faster, and this time save accumulates over the run, such as this one, which is about just a short of 2 hours long. And in this category in particular, the time save difference that you get from using a backwards compatible PS3 varies a bit based on the route. But this route that Zen is using is about 1 minute and 50 seconds faster. Backwards compatible PlayStation 3 compared to PS2.
Yeah, so it's a rather hefty amount. However, this really doesn't come into play too much until you're at a extremely top level of the game. So I generally tell people to not really worry about that requirement until they get in, they get, a few hundred hours into the game, decide if they really want to be serious, and then make that investment, because they can be kind of pricey, unfortunately. I think I got lucky getting mine at about $80. So it can be quite a hefty investment, and as I'm sure a lot of people know, they're not the most reliable in the world. Unfortunately, some of them do tend to break pretty easily, so that's never a good thing to have your game need to require a expensive and not reliable console to run on.
But as a PS2 player, I can assure that having a slower console does not restrict your enjoyment to play the game.
Exactly. Playing the game on PS2 is just as fun, just as well, I guess it's not just as optimal, but you only lose time on loads and resets. You can do every trick, like I said, so It's literally only there if you want to make that final push to being the absolute best of the best.
Yeah. So here Zen is gonna perform another one of these cutscene skips.
And I actually succeeded.
Yes.
I don't have a very good track record with that one.
Cutscene skip used to be a staple in all of the categories, but these days we only do it in 100%. And the reason for that will be shown later.
Yeah, a little surprise later on for anyone who might have missed the run at SGDQ.
Oh boy, I'm looking forward to that surprise. I didn't actually see it at SGDQ.
Well, hopefully that surprise will go a little better than it went at SGDQ.
So this is the first level in the run that has 40 bottles. Previous top has been 30. Yeah, so yeah, this is a pretty long level, and a section of it that goes pretty off the rails from the linear path you would normally take in order to collect bottles. This game are pretty linear and straightforward in structure, and this makes collecting these collectibles, such as clue bottles, rather easy for a casual player doing a playthrough as well.
And once again, cool routing, activating the next area of the game, and then going back in the level, skip the vault animation, get a little bit further in the next part of the level. It's really cool. I love it. I love this category so much. It's so good.
Now we're gonna backtrack all the way to the vault, and yeah, this category is because it's the most demanding category in this game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's really technical and challenging overall. Not your typical good category for a beginner and such, but a beginner-friendly or beginner-friendly categories in this game, though, which are such all keys and all vaults.
Mm-hmm.
All keys was just run on the GDQ.
Yes. So if you want to check out the all keys route, like this category might seem pretty intimidating at first, and I will definitely say I agree with Remo. It is not the most beginner friendly. It will chew you up and spit you out with no remorse if you have not played the game before, or if it's been a while since you've played it. So I highly recommend starting with all keys for sure. And the SGDQ run was at SGDQ 2019. I did all keys there if you wanted to go and check that out afterwards. See if that's something else that interests you.
So, despite this category being challenging overall, Zen is such a pro in this game that he's gonna just simply make watching this run very enjoyable because he's just simply so good at the game.
See, now you can't do that. I already had nerves. Now you're just gonna make them work.
So what you're saying is he's gonna demolish the game for us live here on stream.
So yeah, let's just say that some amount of practice has been put by him into this category. Result is much what you would expect from that. Let's just say that.
Yeah, you certainly, and that really goes for any speedrun, for whatever game you're playing. You don't get anywhere without practice, and I think that's, you know, I fell into that trap too when I first started speedrunning. I still fall into that trap when I try to pick up other stuff. You know, you're never gonna be good starting out, and I feel like that's like one of the hardest pills to swallow with speedrunning, is that it always seems so much more daunting than it actually is, and you feel like, you're not making any progress, when in reality you're making just immense progress, and it's just going to take another day or two of refining, and then you'll be nailing that trick that you've been practicing for the last 2 weeks every single time. You're just not quite there yet, so.
Yeah, it's something I tell people a lot who think that, like, they can't get into speedrunning or so that kind of stuff. It's just like, no, you just need to put in the time. If you want to do it, you can do it. It's not
Exactly.
about being good, it's just if you want to put in the time or not.
So this level is called Boneyard
Excuse
Casino.
you.
And
Not you, the bottle. Sorry. You're good.
so here we're gonna open already, and this is going to give us the essential power-up that makes this category so good. Fast, literally.
I see what you did there.
Hmm?
Alright, so this is where a lot of people say, this is where it gets fun, blah blah blah. But no, this is where it gets fun.
So what power up did
Yeah,
we just gain?
it's literally called fast. Power fast. The power fast increases the in-game speed by 50%.
Oh.
Yeah, as we can see, move fast all across the game from here on out. And since we now have this ability, we can start doing the Master Thief sprints also. Basically, the speed of this category is determined by how quickly you can obtain, because it is so overpowered in this category. And this is also the reason why we skip all the Master Thief sprints before footing, because doing those Master Thief sprints is so much faster with this ability.
Yeah, and this is one time where I will kind of brag on everyone that runs this category. You'll notice that Remo mentioned that it speeds up the game by 50%. That's everything. That's Sly, that's in-game cycles, that's enemies, that's the thief sprint clock. You don't actually gain an advantage. So if you're just running through a level like normal without using any strats, you still have to adhere to that very strict timeline that the developers had intended for you. So that's one of the hardest things is when you're learning this game, you kind of live or die by the Master Thief sprints and how well you can learn to adapt to really quick changes. We mentioned earlier the alarms speed up that clock, and it can be really unforgiving. One small step up, and you could just lose a minute and a half, just like that, like the snap of a finger.
How hard
Also-
do the proxies get when you're using fast?
Some of them are pretty hard still. If you sit there and you practice some of the really precise stuff, you can still kind of nail it down. You'll see me almost always take off fast, just because I value the consistency a little more. But you can certainly learn how to do the entire game with fast if you really wanted to.
Using fast also slightly changes some specific physics in this game. Very noticeable, but because everything is just going literally so fast, it does affect some minor things. Well, Slice Kane's hitbox missing a bottle.
Yes, we love that one. We love that change. So it really feels like Sly's Kane is kind of adherent to like the frame rate of the game, and because fast kind of alters that whole like setup to it, it kind of seems like his hitbox can be a little wacky at times. You feel like you should have hit something and you don't. Sometimes it feels like you shouldn't have hit something and you just get it. You just take those. You just kind of accept it.
So this level here, by the way, we've been playing this for a while now. It's a race. You just drive around the lap for 3 times and then you win.
It is
So-
literally that simple.
We're gonna see another one of these later in the run, but for that race, let's just say there's a different story for that.
Yeah. It's a little shorter. Not by much, but it's a little shorter.
There's again nothing else except the key in this level.
Yeah, so that's
You can see the
Nope, go ahead.
infirmary for the first time.
Yeah, I was gonna just say the common theme is if a level is a platformer, you can expect a key, a bottle, and a Master Thief sprint or a time trial. And if a level is not, and it's a minigame or a race, you'll only get a key in that level. There's another type of alternate level that I believe we refer to as a rail shooter. And essentially that's just a level where you protect Murray. He's going to make a run for a key, and you essentially play a first-person shooter game.
So
Here we
this
have
level,
Oh, you were already getting into it. See, this is why I love you, Remo.
this level is called Straight to the Top, and it has some interesting bottle routing. So we're gonna see a proxy performed by Zen here. And this proxy is one of the easiest proxies in the game, so we can perform that on a regular basis. Since we discovered that, it was also found that it was faster to alter the bottle route, so that we're gonna do the proxy a total of 3 times in this category. 3 times the proxy power, and also because it's very quickly to get to the key and to the vault from the start of the level with that proxy. Skipping the vault animation is also faster, so this makes interesting bottle routing possible when you don't have to bottles on the first playthrough to the vault.
Yeah, I'd say
there's
there's at least probably 6 different routes you can do in this level that are all within probably 10 seconds of each other.
It's a very large level. Once again, 40 bottles here. Seen in this game.
You mentioned
For example,
skipping the vault animation. How does that work?
oh yeah, I can explain this. So, when we load game, when we select load game in this game, we press the button to load game. That's when we reset all the values in the memory to the point that they were since the last autosave. Pressing load game, there is a fade out that lasts for 1.5 seconds. And whatever you do during that fade out will carry on the next load. If you get an autosave for any completion of any kind, 5-second fade out, that will be saved as well.
Yeah, so loading mechanics and saving mechanics in this game are incredibly broken and can be very easily abused. And that's the reason why we run the game on the PS2 version. I forgot to mention, there is a remaster of this game, of the entire Sly series, on the PlayStation 3, called the HD Cooper Collection, something like that. I died. That's sad. That loading mechanic is essentially patched on that version of the game, and you cannot use that at all. So a really big time loss there, not being able to utilize that to its full potential.
So everything you do on the PlayStation 3 version during that 1.5 second fade out does not count. Here, we're gonna see the most fun and enjoyable skip in the game.
Oh, that could have made it. I didn't mean to check it out. Dang it.
This is preferred as
There we go.
eat skip. So essentially, in a casual playthrough, Carmelita, that is gonna start shooting us here, and Sly and Carmelita will have a friendly banter with each other for a whopping time of 35 seconds. And that's too much for us, so we want to skip that, and we just did.
And I want to point out, the proxy portion of that with the antenna looks exactly as hard as it seems like. However, the jump back inbounds, that looks really easy, but Sly's feet was actually touching the death barrier there. You have a very, very tight window of, I don't think frames is the correct word, but you have a very tight window to actually make that jump. Otherwise, you die and you have to redo the first part of the trick again as well. And we kind of glossed over it. When I spawned into the level, you saw that I kind of hugged the right side of the wall. That's because Bentley has a little overlay there where he talks to you and tells you that, you know, the keys at the end of the level, this area, you know, sucks, blah blah blah. We don't care about Bentley and what he has to say, so we jump to the right to skip him, and it actually is a benefit, and also not just having to hear Bentley talk, but whenever there's dialogue playing in the background, you actually can't use the fast ability. I assume this was to prevent like dialogue distortion or desyncing, but it becomes very annoying in spots where we can't skip dialogue simply because, you know, the trigger for the dialogue is just too big.
And since we're playing the game with 1.5 times the speed of normal, pretty much the entire rest portion of the run that is remaining, and when it happens, when dialogue has been triggered, it just seems like we're like slowing time at that point.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
like some.
I was routing a category in Chrono Cross, which also has a speed up function if you do the New Game Plus stuff, and you're running around using the speed up while you're routing and doing things. Then like you do something at normal speed, it just feels like it's in slow motion. It's like, I know it's the real time, but it just feels so slow. It's like, come on, let me go fast again.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're driving on like the interstate and you're doing like 70 miles an hour, and then you know, drive on like a city road and you're doing 30, and it just feels like you're standing still.
This level is really cool, by the way. Back Alley Heist. Sen, is this your favorite level in the game?
No, actually. My favorite is Boneyard Casino.
Oh, well, this is mine.
I see you have great taste in picking a Hub 2 level, though.
Up 2 levels are the best in general. Just personal.
Go back, thank you. You will see, though, one of my splits later on, I think is called Best Level in World 4. That was before we had some of these really cool route changes added to these levels. And I need to probably update that split.
Well, from this vault, we are going to get it's not, I don't think it can be called as a power-up. What would you call it as?
I would call it trash. And I feel like that's being nice.
So, what does this trash do?
Nothing. For the most part. Its intended use is to distract guards into more favorable positions for you to, you know, run up and kill them, essentially. But every enemy in the game is placed in such a way that if you just use some creative thinking, you can almost always find a sneaky way to get around them. So it just serves no real purpose. You can only have one of them out at a time. You can only throw it like 3 Sly's character models, so it doesn't even go very far. You can't even stand on it. So like, you know, if it had collision, we could use it in the speedrun for some really creative jumps.
Oh, I bet you could
but
set up
you can't stand
proxies
on
with it too. That would be...
Yeah. But you just kind of knock it over. It's like those things that like boxers use, where it's like a stand-up like balloon thing. You
Yeah.
like punch it to knock it down, and it comes back up. It's kind of like that when you run into it.
There's one of those in Ratchet and Clank that they used to go out of bounds a lot. The
Yeah.
decoy thing.
Yeah, I wish we had decoy clipping. That would be cool. Unfortunately, we have to do our clipping manually, and we don't actually see that in this category, unfortunately. The only clip in the run is exclusive to any percent and all keys. And I guess all vaults as well. I technically put that in there because I'm a madman. I like to go fast.
Here we just met the boss of World 2. It's called Mugshot. We're gonna defeat him by hitting a bunch of mirrors.
Don't question it. Just accept it.
We're giving them lots of bad luck, I guess. Oh, they're not breaking.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hitting mirrors.
It's more
Nice
like
theory, actually.
yeah, that's a lot better I think than the actual theory, where you're just melting his guns with the sun. I like the idea of giving him bad luck. And that bad luck kind of catches up to him in Sly 3.
Zen is gonna perform a trick called a chandelier jump. So casually, we would have to spire jump around this entire platform. We can just jump on it and hit all the mirrors like that very quickly.
It's really cool that they actually made the platform have collision instead of just making Mugshot like a static thing at that level and he just turns manually. They actually put collision up there for him to properly stand on, which is really cool.
So right there with
You
the
would-
boss, you like defeated him during that second and a half fade out of the load, and that's why it skips
Yes.
the cutscene.
Exactly.
Pretty much the same thing with the vault animation skips.
Yeah, it's a
Oh.
very, very overpowered mechanic that we use as much as we can, is doing things during the little fade outs. And you can actually do that with the exit level as well. There's another command on the pause menu called exit level that just takes you out of the level. And then there's a much shorter window of time after that. It's about half a second. But you can also do things in that little half second as well that will transfer over. And you can kill bosses the same way, you know, you can unlock vaults the same way. You can collect keys. It's really crazy how much you can do in a very short amount of time.
Before we entered the World 2 boss, we didn't use the intended route for entering that boss. It's basically the same what it is in any percent. And we also had to do it in that situation since we once again didn't have the amount of keys for doing that. We skipped this level and we get the key for this level, defeating the boss. And the only reason basically for it is that now we have fast gadget, so we can use fast during the movement to that level. So that's just a little optimization, but hey, it saves time, and that's the most important thing. This is the surprise we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so really interesting mechanic where when Sly's pressed up against a surface like that, that enemy can't actually kill you until his attack's like little startup animation has gone through. So you can use that to have him basically push you into that little corner and just skyrocket launch you to the end of the level.
That is a very cool trick.
Probably one of my more favorite new tricks. It might actually be my favorite new trick, honestly.
It's Coin-chan doing a Master Thief sprint.
Yeah, I wanted this in Tango, but there's coins at the beginning of Tango, unfortunately, so...
Yeah, that's also one thing with the Master Thief sprints. If you have a charm, which is basically allows you to take damage without dying. If you have any type of charm, even either a silver or a gold charm, when you enter a Master Thief sprint mode, it takes those charms off, and the only way you can get a charm after that during the sprint is by collecting 100 coins as well.
So once again, they're skipping that dialogue. And here, don't mind this. Oh, actually, wait. There we go. Okay, don't mind that. It's a byproduct of date skip from earlier. The cutscene tries to start, but because I'm in the thief sprint, it actually can't play. So, yeah.
A date skip saves about 30 seconds for all keys, the category that we saw in GDQ earlier this year. But for 100%, it saves less because of that animation that lasts 1 second, and then we also have to backtrack a bit to get some bottles.
So I'm making some kind of unoptimal plays here because I really wanted a coin charm for this jump. It's really simple. It's very, very hard to mess up. But if you do mess it up and you die, we don't have the falling in pits immunity page yet. And dying at the end of a thief sprint is just really sad. Because you have to do the entire level from the very beginning again. And nobody wants to do that.
One thing with Master Thief sprints as well, it does not give you any checkpoints.
Which it leads the category to be very risky and kind of scary, but at the same time, it gives you that extra level of excitement. It's like, it's just really hard. You're doing all these crazy tricks, and at the same time, if you mess up, well, tough luck.
And talking about that, this stealthy approach Master Thief sprint is probably the tightest in terms of time window we can actually complete the Master Thief sprint out of all the Master Thief sprints. There is usually only a few seconds left on the clock.
And that's if you're playing, perfectly in this category. Traditionally, when you do these casually, you use the ability roll. But because fast speeds up the game so much, any thief sprint you can complete without having to use roll. You just need to be very, creative and precise with your movement. So it's always faster to just use fast when you're doing 100%. You sacrifice so much time not using it, unless you used it for a very small portion of the level.
Having that tiny amount of time left on the clock is very rare in this route and in the speed run, since we have so many major skips of the levels, which gives us a well, let's just say it's a pretty lenient time that we are left with.
Yeah, this is another one that's really, really tight though. Yeah, I honestly I don't know how I'm gonna do this one with all this pressure on me.
What's that?
Oh god, I was joking. All right, we're good. We're good. Nothing to worry about. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Did you almost die after sassing this Master Thief sprint?
No, nope. I don't know what you're talking about.
Those are the shameful deaths when you're sassing the game about this part being easy, and then you die and you're like, no!
One of my more famous Twitch clips is me bragging about how good I am at Sly 2, and then immediately forgetting how much health I have, and just dying and having to restart a job over it. It's not my proudest moment, to say the least.
Here we just saw a trick called ACD Proxy performed for the first time, and we're gonna immediately see it performed for the second time.
Yeah. So this trick is incredibly hard. There's actually a community member by the name of Zuriyu, who we kind of go to for things that are really hard. He has a computer that's really beefy and can use the, I'll put it nicely and say the not so great task tools that PS2 has available to it. And he finds ways to finagle really weird and awkward setups and give us, how precise a trick can be. And that trick is precise down to just a few frame window that you have to actually perform the trick. And because of that, it's one of the really hard things to learn. And I kind of tell people to just not bother with it when they're learning this category and they're learning, all keys. Because it only saves 15 seconds, but at a high level, that really matters. At a low level, there's really no reason to be throwing every single one of your runs to save a few seconds. It's just kind of silly, for my speedrunning philosophy at least.
This level is pretty much just the same in execution as the previous one, since we pretty much the exact same route 2 times in a row.
Yeah, and that is why we skipped the key earlier. What's my coin count? I'm at 5. Uh-oh, that's not very good. Whatever. It'll be fine. But the reason why we didn't grab the keys earlier in those 2 levels is since coming back with fast is it's just so much faster than playing the level normally, and grabbing the key in the first visit, that you can delay grabbing the key and then just use fast to just blitz through the level twice really quickly and just, you know, clean up the level in record time and save 10 plus seconds on each of those levels. That was a little sketchy, but we're good.
Yeah. There we just saw a first bit of using super jumping in order to complete the Master Thief sprint.
It's interesting how the proxies in this game can send you at angles other than just up. Because I've seen proxies in other PlayStation games, and a lot of them just send you upwards, and then you have to gain your horizontal momentum through other means. But some of these just send you straight sideways, it seems like.
So if you're referring to the thing that I just did, that's a different technique. We've used the term, but I don't think we've actually explained it. So super jumping is a term that we use to describe the entirety of a trick where Sly's grounded position doesn't update if you jump within a 6-frame window of landing on the ground. However, you can extend this very tight frame window to about a full second, it seems almost, by swinging your cane right before you land. And if you do this properly, you can move throughout the entirety of the level without updating Sly's ground position. And the next time that you get stuck in a spot or you take damage via falling in a pit, falling in water, it'll send you back to that last position while getting rid of Sly's collision. So you can just kind of fade through walls and do a bunch of crazy stuff with it. However, you can still activate load zones, which is why it's utilized for some of the thief sprints. So it's kind of like the same concept as a proxy, and that it's a fail-safe mechanic built into the game. It's just kind of used differently, I guess.
So now we're done with the first 2 worlds. Gonna move into World 3. And for World 3, since this area of the game contains a lot of water damage planes, or death planes, it's good that we have the water safety page unlocked so we don't take damage from water anymore in this game.
Yeah, luckily they thought ahead, and if you were getting every vault casually, you'll always have the waterfall page before you get here. So I wanted to make sure that the casual players didn't get screwed over by all this swamp water everywhere.
Our level is, or like world is located in a swamp in the Haitian jungle. There's water everywhere.
Now, I would say that this opinion is probably shared throughout all of the 100% runners, but Remo, would you agree that this category is, or this hub world is the hardest in 100%?
Yes, by far, it's not even close.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So for example, this run here has been pretty good so far. World 3. Let's hope for the best.
Yeah, World 3 is essentially the gatekeeper. It's I call it in 100%, I would say it's probably the first real gatekeeper. If you can get past this, there's only probably 3 or 4 spots after it that are really tricky, but this entire hub world is just, 10, or not 10, like 15, 20 minutes of just play perfectly or deal with losing 30 plus seconds.
So here we are going to skip opening the vault. We're not going to do the same thing that we did with the intro levels to Worlds 1 and 2. We're just gonna skip opening the vault for that level for now and continue on to the next level, but we'll get back to that vault later.
Did I trigger the cutscene? I did, okay. And that's actually, we mentioned earlier that PAL and NTSCU are essentially the same thing now. We've kind of found different setups for various tricks to make everything pretty much coherent. On PAL, for some almost inexplicable reason, we think it's tied to how the frame rate works, right?
it's gotta be that. Like, honestly.
Yeah. That cutscene that I was greeted by when I exited Dread Swamp Path, 2/3 of the time, that cutscene, you just don't run into it on PAL. So you can actually go back in the level and unlock the vault right then and there, and it's a little bit faster overall routing-wise, but that's pretty much the only benefit, I would say, to running on PAL.
Once again, there Zen skipped one of those dialogues that would disable use of fast for a bit, but it's pretty hard to know this since we skipped it. There was no indication of it, pretty much.
Yeah, so that, the stick that I avoided, where the bottle was kind of hanging over, if you land on that little stick, Bentley talks to you about this, like, snake, or not the snake, but this, like, rustling in the water that's going on, and he tries to set the mood by scaring you when you're, 6 years old and torment you about this thing that's underneath the water and how, you better get out of there fast.
Wait,
But,
Zen, we didn't see any snake there? Wait.
Wait, what are you talking about, Remo? You didn't see the snake? It was chasing me during that last portion, right? Am I just blind? Or am I
Where
seeing
did the
things,
snake
rather?
go? What happened to the snake? Did
So
we just...
this is a little joke that we do. It's very overplayed by this point. But
Yeah.
it's actually kind of funny because 100% used to be the only category you would see the snake. But a member of my like personal stream community, he actually found a way to skip triggering the snake in that section, that last little section that I did with the 4 bottles. Normally, if you remember playing this game casually, the snake would chase you there. But my boy Ted found a way to get around that trigger. That was really odd. Found a way to avoid that trigger, so you don't have to deal with the really bad camera and potentially losing lots of time.
Casually playing this game as a kid, that snake was honestly pretty terrifying.
Yeah, yes.
That's a good thing that we didn't see it today. But yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to scare anybody watching the stream.
This level here is called Piranha Lake, but in the speedrunning community, we refer to this as simply as fish, because that's literally what it is.
Yeah. And it's very fun. Totally. I don't think anybody hates this level, honestly.
So, as you can see, we're not using fast ability here, because it is disabled when using this vehicle. It's also disabled when using a different type of another vehicle that we will come across later on. Basically, in this level, we're gonna run over these fishes and we're gonna get some oil from running over them, which flamethrower of this vehicle, and we can light up these torches, and that will gain us access to this area. I'm not making this up. That is literally what it is.
Why would you have to make it up? That's how it works in real life, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I've heard many tales of people running over piranhas with their personal hoverboats that have flamethrowers attached to them, and burning down the gators, and I don't know. I promise I had a coherent thought there and then I lost it.
Here, Zen is not gonna break that tombstone because it would have triggered another of those cutscenes or dialogues, which would have disabled fast.
And there's a lot of that in the run that, if it's not really explained why a really minor thing happens, it's almost always because it triggers a Bentley dialogue if you don't do that. So also
We try our best to explain this stuff, and look at this out of bounds.
it's just awesome.
I
So
feel
cool.
like that shouldn't should have been a wall there. It looked like there was a wall there.
No. The walls don't exist in Sly games.
It just didn't have collision. They didn't feel the need to add collision to that wall.
Yeah, I've seen a good number of PlayStation games where it's just nobody will be up here. Why would we need to put collision here?
Exactly. And then someone finds a way to get up there 20 years later.
Hey, at least the developers saved some file size, I guess.
Yeah. And they saved us time in the speedrun.
It's true. It's a win-win.
Exactly.
And also we're gonna have some very interesting routing here at the end of this level as well.
No, we're gonna have unoptimal routing.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Would you
I
like
apologize.
to explain the alternative route then?
Yeah. So the faster route for this level is when you grab that bottle by the key, you actually just hit the key right afterwards and load the game to go back to the start. And there's a really cool out of bounds you can do that you see in 80% in all keys that you use to get to the key faster. You can actually use that same out of bounds and go the other direction and come to this vault. And I'll kind of try to point it out here. You actually jump down from up there and come back down and skip the vault after that. I'm really bad at that trick in this category for whatever reason. It's just like my kryptonite. I just cannot do it to save my life. So I don't do it. However, I do tell people if they're like, you know, when they get up to that high level, if you want to do it, do it. Like the only reason why I don't do it is because it scares me.
Was another just casual out of bounds strat to get to this level? So this level, once again, has a different name than what we commonly refer it to as in the Sly community. Down home cooking, aka chickens. Because that's literally what it is, once again.
We like to keep things simple. Straight to the point. We're killing chickens, levels chickens. Killing fish, it's called fish. Killing crabs, it's called crabs.
See a pattern here. And also with fast ability, this is how would you describe this level with fast then?
This level with fast? Well, if we're gonna keep it nice and family friendly, we'll say it's like a Yorkie puppy was crossbred with another like really small yappy dog that just doesn't know how to stop just going off of the walls. And then that offspring, it had another child with another of that exact same type of puppy. And then that animal, that resulting offspring, that would literally be able to run up walls, is kind of what that level is like with fast.
Chasing analogies then.
No, it's it goes by extremely quickly. It feels like you're taking forever to do the minigame, and then when you finish it, you look at the your timer and you're like, oh, that only took me a minute. Oh, because you're so stressed and like the adrenaline's flowing the entire time. Because those roosters that you might have saw, the red ones, if I hit those, I blow up and take a point of damage, and I don't really want to do that. That's not very good. So.
Fortunately, Zen also has a charm here, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, we can actually touch on why I have this charm. So, not only am I doing unoptimal movement in Grave Undertaking by not doing the out of bounds strat that I mentioned, it's also faster to do every thief sprint. Once you have fast directly afterwards, there are only a very few instances where doing the entire level in one trip isn't actually faster. Grave Undertaking is not one of those exceptions, so I am going to lose time later on coming back to that level. But the reason why I do that is so that I can have that safety charm for chickens. And then this end section of this level right here can be kind of scary if you don't have a charm as well. So I like to have the safety over the time I would lose in the extra load later.
Yes. And the time loss that we're talking about here is mere seconds. And,
Yeah.
you die, for example, in this final portion of this level that we just witnessed, that death would be like 30 plus seconds, right?
Probably more like a minute actually. Oh no, there's the checkpoint there. You're right. So it would be about 30 seconds, yeah. Having to redo the ending section.
We're gonna get to the probably the most convoluted level in this category, Descent into Danger. Remember the bottles, and
Remember the bot. Thank you.
we talked about this right before the run.
Oh, that's gonna hit me. That's fine. Excuse me, game? I would like to go back on the platform, thank you.
Well, despite the fact that we have the water safety page, we still have to wiggle around in the water for a few seconds. Get back up though. Although this level is known for the fact that sometimes, even though we have water damage, we take damage from water. Why did that happen then? What do you think?
Honestly, I feel like if I had to take an actual like stab at it instead of just making up some like goofy reason, my best guess would be, it tends to happen the majority of the time when you enter water like too quickly, or you enter it by like sliding into it from like a standing surface. So I feel like the game just doesn't properly update you sometimes, and when you hit the water, it's like, oh, well, you're in a spot where you shouldn't be dying, but it's thinking that you're in a spot where you should die when you take the damage, so it just doesn't have enough time to check that it should be saving you, so it just kills you. That would be my best guess, as convoluted as that is. But yeah.
So here, this has been going. Oh, actually, now we even got a charm. Perform a cutscene. And collect
There we go.
dialogue skip.
No, I triggered the dialogue. Dang.
We get to hear Ms. Ruby's pleasant voice, who is the main antagonist of this world.
For like 3 seconds.
Yes. And then we're gonna trigger another dialogue.
So you can actually skip that dialogue if you jump out far enough. I didn't manage to get out far enough, so I triggered the Ms. Ruby dialogue. However, she talks for so long that it's actually faster to go a little bit forward in the level and trigger Bentley's dialogue, because his only talks for probably 5 seconds, whereas she goes on for 30 plus. So you just shorten the dialogue. It is still ultimately slower, but if you accidentally trigger it, that's kind of your backup.
An interesting thing we're also going to witness here is that since we're going to get the autosave for this vault after we pressed load game, collect the vault, but...
Now, Remo, I thought I collected that bottle.
I clearly remember you doing that as well.
So, does that mean that my run is now invalid because that bottle has come back?
No, since we still collected the vault and got the percentage for it.
Exactly. So, our definition for 100% is essentially if you collect the thing that gives you the percentage point during the run, that counts. So, for these, levels like this where the routing just has to work out in such a way that it's faster to load the game to skip a vault, and then the vault works afterwards. Well, that was really fun.
It's something that fast ability can also make happen on a more regular basis.
Lost my train of thought. Yeah, so the vault is considered as unlocked. If I were to run back there and look, the vault would be open, Sly's calling card would be there. I still got the percentage point and the power up from it, so that's enough for the definition of the category. Respawning the bottles gives you no benefit. Other than like right there, you saw I jumped on top of the safe to make that jump a little easier. You can still make that jump without the safe being there, so that's actually a neat idea to think about, Remo. Using that, abusing the bottles respawning to, use the safes for jumps that we couldn't.
So here we're gonna enter the third boss in the game. She's called Miss Ruby, and unfortunately during this first phase of the fight, and actually once again use of fast has been disabled, and the reason for this is it's how this boss fight has been structured and executed, since it's a rhythm-based. Continue talking about it. So we're gonna do this out of bounds strat here to skip a cutscene.
I missed it.
But despite missing it, we still got the cutscene skipped by just touching the water over there.
Yeah, so for this boss fight, they when they were designing it, they figured that there's no possible way that you can ever get behind her. So the entire water behind her, well, not the entirety of it, but like 90% of the water behind her, if you simply touch it, it sets your flag in the memory as being in the second phase of the boss fight. So you can do that, come back down and die, and it'll set you as being in the second phase of the fight without actually having to deal that point of damage to her and watching the cutscene, where she explains how to play what is essentially just DDR.
Yes, and because of the structure of this boss fight being a DDR, they disabled fast, probably for conveniency, to avoid discrepancies in the audio.
Yeah. Can you imagine doing this section with fast?
Why?
It just sounds awful.
So do you have a moment for me to cut in here real quick?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to remind everybody watching here, while we're DDRing it up, that Hotfix is funded in part thanks to your subscriptions and bits. So we thank everybody who's tuned in, and if you would consider subscribing, then it would help to support future broadcasts. This has been a pretty great show so far.
I'm glad you think so.
I've been enjoying this very much, and Zen has too, since the run has been going pretty well so far, actually.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty good marathon run so far.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely not upset by anything other than that one like bonehead mistake I made earlier on.
Here at the end of this boss fight, we're gonna skip the final phase of it by getting a double
Metal
hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's actually faster there. Like I mentioned earlier, you can do the same thing that you do when you load the game by exiting level and killing the boss
The
fight.
undertaking MTS.
What? Oh, right, I'm supposed to do grave first. Whatever. It's fine.
Minor.
Yeah. So, you can exit level there and deal the final points of damage on Ms. Ruby during that fade out. And it's a little bit faster, it saves you having to reload into the level. However, it can be a little risky. You have a shorter time window, and sometimes, I haven't been able to figure out why, sometimes you'll just get locked in place and you won't be able to actually attack her after you exit level. So, obviously, a 4-minute time loss in a marathon run's not exactly what I want. So, I'd rather take the, 5-second time loss of loading into the level a second time. That feels a lot safer, in my opinion.
Earlier we talked about the patched PS3 version. Well, on that version, exiting level is the only way to skip that last phase, though.
Which is really cool that actually, like that's like the one thing that kind of carries over. And it's extremely useful there, because beforehand, that was what, like a minute lost on PSN? And now it's basically the same as console, or PS2.
It's very nice. Now we're gonna go to the Grave Undertaking MTS, and we're gonna perform a trick. Classic trick in this game. called a hook jump. Been around for
Oh,
a
yes.
long time.
That makes me very happy.
Funny to think how we can get that first try these days when we think back from here when it was found and discovered and thought to be extremely difficult to perform.
Yeah. When the check was initially found, the only person that was actually crazy enough to do it in runs was the person that found it, if I remember right. Everybody else just stuck to the old strat, the out of bounds that I used the first trip in the level to get to that area where I just kind of jumped through the ceiling. You can do that, but take a different route and run to the key early. That was the old strat. But, you know, we've learned a lot about this game, a lot of the tricks that used to be considered, you know, incredibly difficult. Now we have a lot more tools and resources available to utilize to learn the game.
This has been pretty crazy throughout the years.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I was gonna
just
mention. Did I miss a bottle? 6 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, we're good. Weird. Okay. I swear I remember my bottle count should be 12 there, but we're fine.
Wait, I actually forgot the correct bottle count there for a second as well.
Yeah. It's one of those things, and that's, you know, another thing that's really hard about the category and why we mentioned earlier that it's not very beginner friendly. It seems like that would be something really simple to keep track of, right? Like break a bottle, keep track of it. There's a counter in the top right, but there's so many other things that are going on in your head when you're doing, you know, a speed run that, you know, it can be very easy to just have a short little lapse in memory, think you forgot a bottle, and, you know, then you're like, oh man, like how am I gonna route that back in later? Do I need to go check for it now? You know, am I wasting time by even thinking about it? So it can be really scary, and a little overwhelming at first, but, you know, take your time, make sure you do every level, you know, a bunch, get used to where counts should be at certain parts of the level, and it can help alleviate some of that stress.
So here Zen performed another super jump to access the main hub without the key. Overall, we're at the World 4 now, which is its own entity, let's just say that. World 4 as not as hard, but it sure can be very technical.
I would agree with that. It's definitely a breath of fresh air coming from World 3, which is easily the most stressful section of the run. And you know, there's a few extra levels in here that are more downtime. You don't have to worry about any RNG in this area. Like you just playing the game and pressing the square button a bunch. So it's a nice little breather to have. Some of the sections of platformer levels, some of the movements, a little bit more lax.
This level in particular is an example of a nice little kind of like a where you can let loose for a bit.
Yeah. But it's not to say that, you know, you can just get away scot-free without really paying attention. Like Remo mentioned, it's still really technical. You still have to pay attention and don't let your mind drift too much, or you can very easily make a mistake. And, you know, just because this level or this area is a little bit easier, it doesn't mean it still can't just eat you alive if you let it, so.
I like how this character keeps turning back and waving at you occasionally.
Yeah. He does that whenever he's stuck in a spot and you need to help him out.
Oh, Murray.
Okay. Are we good? Yeah, alright. Murray can sometimes just run off there and, you know, just fall in the pit and die, which is very weird. But it didn't happen, so.
At the end of this level, we're gonna get a total of 10 guard spawns, and where those guards spawn is RNG dependent. we defeat all these 10 guards, we're gonna get the key.
It's actually kind of crazy. One of the things that you notice very, very evidently when you play the Sly games is the departure in character of Murray from Sly 1 to Sly 2. In the first game, he's very much, scared to be out in the field, doesn't really know what he's doing. You can tell he's very green to the world, so to speak. And in Sly 2, he's two-shotting guards with his fists, making them look like nothing.
The
His
trilogy in
personality
general
shifts.
has been like kind of gotten a lot of credit for its story and character development. How the gameplay is presented.
This looks like a good place to try out your new invisibility move.
Amazing how solid the overall story in these games is as well.
Not guards. Oh, and if the guards already see you, then the invisibility
Here, there was one of these very long sections where Bentley talked a lot and we couldn't use fast.
That one's really sad because it's so close to being able to skip it. There's like 3 different spots where you can just barely make a jump to potentially get over it, but the dialogue trigger extends almost essentially to the ceiling in that room. So there's just no hope of skipping it. It's really sad.
Bentley really wants to tell you about invisibility in that room, I guess.
He does.
Yeah. Although we can complete this level rather easily. That ability.
Uh-oh. Alright, we're good.
This is a pretty clutch section of this level.
Yeah, if you trigger those alarms, those lasers are not very forgiving. And that's another spot, actually, where I'm doing a slightly unoptimal route, because it's simply just... It's not that it's too hard to do, it just requires practice, and I haven't put in the time yet, because it's still a very new discovery for that route. And Cavallo is a new trick that was discovered kind of during the Sly Cooper renaissance of the last, year and a half, where... And we can touch on this, actually, in a little bit later if you want, Remo, the whole Renaissance period. But there was a new trick found in that little period of time in this level that changed up every category. And it's really, really precise. And if you don't get it properly the first time, you don't really get any of the time save that it gives you. And you can potentially start losing time. So... I don't bother doing it in this category for that reason. However, note that it is very, very possible to save another,
12
15, 20
in this
seconds.
category.
Yeah. What Remo said. Trust him on numbers, not me.
So the thing is then referred to as is called as the unseen foe proxy. Oh, and also, we skipped the Master Thief sprint in the Unseen Foe, and we're gonna get back later why we did that. This level is called Flaming Temple of Flame, and this has once again some very interesting battle routing that has also been found rather recently, and by you, Zen, as well.
Yes, I unfortunately did this to everyone.
This route is cool.
It is cool, but it's really hard.
Yeah, so Zen is gonna do this the most optimal way, which is very technical.
Also, again, walls don't exist in the Sly games. Don't worry about it.
We're gonna
Also-
basically break the entire structure of this level and do it completely in unintended order, from start to finish.
So normally you're supposed to... Oh, hi. That was a kick to the face. Normally you're supposed to, like wrap around the level to that section that I ended at and do that part of the level first, and then kind of come back and go inside the temple, and then from there come back to where I respawned at that checkpoint at. However, because the ceiling, they didn't expect you to try to, get up there. The ceiling doesn't have collision, so you can actually go through the ceiling, go to the back part of the level first, from where they intend you to do last, essentially, and completely break that area and just do it in one like long linear section. But
Yeah.
I say linear, take that with a grain of salt.
One little interesting note from this level is that it has the largest file size and the longest loading time of any level in this game. Impressive, and tells you how grand in scale it is.
Yeah, it looks very small in the speedrun, especially in any percent where you skip like 60% of it basically.
Here, this vault is very essential for the routing that follows. By gravity page.
Yeah, so walls don't exist in the Sly universe, and neither does gravity apparently. This one, this would be a page that I would like to have in real life. Get some really cool like pictures. You know what I mean? Effectively just flying for 3 seconds.
So essentially what this does is that you don't take full damage anymore. Pretty OP thing.
Yeah, so now we're immune to every damage source in the game other than enemy damage source.
It's gonna allow us to do nice super jump strats as well.
Alright. Now we're coming up on the best section of the run! Yay! I'm so excited to do this part. Are you guys excited?
I don't know what to say to that.
What are you talking about? This is the best part of the game. There's nothing wrong with this section of the game. This level right here. There's nothing wrong with it.
Just gonna hope for the best.
This vehicle is identical to the one you found in Miss Ruby's lair. Someone with some
See, isn't this, nice, quality, intended, casual gameplay? I'm just spinning in this corner.
It's bouncing alright. Yeah, I'm just gonna get it.
Does Sly think he's on the teacup ride or something? Like, what's going on?
Yes, he's actually a really big fan of carnival rides. And, the first level we didn't really get to do this a whole lot, so he's kind of upset, and he kind of forces us to do it here. Hey, there we go. So, that just skipped literally the entire level. Quite literally all of it. And then there I just skipped breaking the tower, and now we're done with the level.
Is that like a proxy or what?
Yeah, so it's the same mechanic as proxies in this game and any other game. You're essentially getting the vehicle stuck between the hitbox of the wall that I was shooting, the wall to my left, and like the floor. It's kind of like uneven how the collision works there. And when you get stuck in that little position, it launches Sly out, and that wall that window is actually a window, so you can use that to land on some out-of-bounds collision, and then just drive straight away to the end of the level. And I actually want to point something out that's really interesting about that level, at least to me, it's something that's really interesting. So you saw there, like I jumped down. Hold on, let me do this. Okay. I jumped down, and I was able to just land on top of the key. And you think, well, why wouldn't they just put a failsafe and put like an invisible wall over it? Well, they did, but only if you are off of the vehicle. So you can actually use on emulator fancy tricks to do those levels without the vehicle and run around in them like a normal platformer level. And you actually cannot run into that section of the level without the vehicle. The game just straight up does not let you.
Wow.
So the failsafe is there, they just messed it up.
That's surprisingly robust.
Yeah.
Too bad, it's not completely robust, only partially.
Yeah.
Well, this
That's one
level
thing.
right here,
Oh, go ahead.
we saw this in World 2, Carmelita is chasing us, trying to shoot us, and we're just gonna escape. And this level, reason why we didn't open the vault in Perilous Ascent before the intro level of World 4 is because getting to this vault later would lose a bunch of time. And the reason for this is that if we would open this vault as the last vault, Zen, can you tell us what would happen?
So, the last vault in the game requires you to have beaten the final boss of the game. It gets locked behind what Bentley calls owl dialect. He says that he can't translate the page, or can't translate the vault code, so you can't open it. And coming back through this entire level after beating the final boss to unlock this vault, and then going and beating the boss again to complete the run, no, no, thank you.
We have a faster
So
alternative for that. And
exactly.
also, collected the key, we can go ahead and do the Master Thief sprint. So, you just saw what we did in the Flaming Temple of Fame, Flame Master Thief sprint, where we completed it with a super jump. Well, this is that, but multiplied. Concentrate really hard here, and you can see that he's super jumping all. And we'll see if we can get the launch we want from this. Great. Looks so cool.
Yes! That's a big weight off my shoulders. That's one of those things I mentioned earlier that's kind of like another late game gatekeeper. That trick is incredibly hard. If at any point I drop a super jump, I have to do the entire trick from the beginning again. There's no other alternative. It's do it the first time or don't do it at all. So it's very, very scary. And I've lost quite a few runs to that before in the past when I was less practiced at it. And, yeah, so I feel like I'm getting sentimental. But yeah, the trick is very difficult.
But nailing it is very,
Oh, it's the most
very
satisfying
rewarding.
experience.
Yeah. World 2, we saw one of these races completed in its entirety, but here we're just not gonna do that. Let's just say that.
What are you talking about, Remo? I love this race. I think I'm gonna do the entire thing. You know?
And then, no. Are you serious?
No.
Wait. Whoa.
I love this trick when people that haven't ever seen a speedrun of it before, they're like, oh man, it's another race section. I hated these as a kid. The first one was so bad in the run. And then you just fly over the end wall and just immediately finish it. And then you're just, oh my goodness, how do you do that? That's crazy. Why does that work? I love it.
So
Yeah, it
why
works
does
because-
it work?
So
Extend the invisible wall over there.
yeah, for whatever reason, and this kind of plays into that theory that people have that, you know, World 4 was intended to be World 2 instead. When they made the invisible wall there to block you from going into that area, they essentially made it kind of like a double-sided like volleyball net is like how I like to explain it, where there's a net at the bottom and then a net at the top to block you, but you can go through the center still. And that's essentially what we're doing, is we're going in between two invisible walls.
Was that, and now we're gonna enter the fourth boss in the game called Panda King. And we can use fast for it.
And there's actually a really cool trick here that was discovered by another member of the community that doesn't really run so much. It was discovered by a guy named Knight Grimoire. And another top runner of the game, Tame Neon, refined it, made it a lot easier. However, I don't like doing it in 100%. I think it's just too hard to do it with using fast, personally. He does it and seems to do it just fine, but Neon's also a madman. So,
We went back to doing the Unseen Foe Master Theme sprint because we skipped it earlier. Delaying this.
I don't want to talk about it.
Delaying this. Was it the rather early portion of the level though? Delaying this makes us have a faster path to go back to the Perilous Ascent vault. Now open.
And right here, as I mentioned earlier, super jumping gets rid of collision, so we just go through the wall. Because walls don't exist. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's another reason we delayed that Master Thief sprint also, because normally with the normal vault route, we would not have the gravity-defying page yet. Who would want to do that on the first playthrough? We would need a charm for that still.
Yeah, we actually used to do some really creative routing, where you do Flaming Temple of Flame first, so that way you could do Unseen Foe in one visit, and then come back and do Flaming Temple MTS after that, because you need to be on that side of the level anyway to go to spinning. However, this just ends up working out and being faster overall, so we switched over to doing this.
Here's is gonna open the final vault in the game and just reset the game instantly after getting the autosave for it.
Yeah, so after you unlock the last vault in the game, not only do you get the cutscene where Bentley explains to you what the page does, which is the stun ability, you also have a cutscene after that where Sly, like, kind of has a little monologue where he's talking about how he's, earned the Master Thief or the Thievius Raccoonus instead of, just being gifted it like the rest of his ancestors. He got to earn it, and he thinks that's really cool, and he's excited to start chronicling his own adventures and stuff. It's a really cool cutscene, very sentimental, but it's slow, so
And
I don't have time for it.
by resetting, we spawn directly at the start of the level, very conveniently, in order to do the Master Thief sprint. This is gonna be the final Master Thief sprint of the run. The stream that we get for this will be slightly different, because since we will be completing, like, this is the final Master Thief sprint, it'll give us a special kind of notification for it, and we'll get thrown into the hideout. Sweet Bentley dialogue. So it works conveniently since we can get to World 5 faster.
That was kind of close. And yeah, another, again, with the creative uses of things for routings, finishing the last Thief sprint will always send you to the hideout. So, we do everything before we do the last Thief sprint, so that way we can just get sent directly to the hideout and then go directly to the end of the game.
I'm just gonna do the super jump strat for the second time since we never actually opened.
Yeah, that was a really interesting find. When I found that doing the super jump and then doing the forest just in like one trip essentially, before the route that I showed you guys here today, before you ran to the key, grabbed the key, watched that animation, and then ran back and unlocked the door manually, I found out that if you do a super jump to just skip through and then run to the key and get all the bottles in one go, that's actually about 15 seconds faster. But a byproduct of that is you don't open the gate, and I actually found that out during a run. I forgot, like, it kind of like was a little lapse. And the first run that I did with the new route, I was like, wait, how do I get past the gate? And I was like, wait, I have a key. So I unlocked it manually in that first run, but doing the super jump is a little bit faster.
Now we entered the final world, World 5, and the main boss, the final boss of the game, is Clockwork. Of all, this is a auto-scroller, to be honest. Clockworks is just gonna pulls in our way, and we're gonna defeat them with a very constant pace. Let's just say that.
So with this build being a little bit longer, even though we don't really have a lot of time to go over it, I wanted to just take some time in the run to mention that we're playing Sly 1 here for you today, and everybody seems to know that Sly 1's a really good speedrun and whatnot, but it's called a community spotlight, and I wanted to give the rest of the games some love. Sly 2, 3, and 4 are all also really solid speedruns. Don't let their length push you away. I thought that at first that the length was going to be kind of ridiculous, but there's ample downtime throughout, so it might be a little daunting overall to learn something that long, but it can be really fun, really rewarding. We kind of joke, at least the Sly 1 guys like to joke a lot, that 2 and 3 don't really have tricks in them, but there actually is quite a few tricks in them, and they're really cool to watch too. So it would mean a lot to me, and kind of the rest of the community for sure, if you also gave them a try, went and checked them out. There's lots of great community members in those games as well, and they're popping off just as much as Sly 1 is.
The Sly community as a whole does enjoy all the Sly Cooper titles. Like, we enjoy every one of them. You guys should too. They're worth it.
So if people wanted to check out the other games, where would they go?
Remo, if you want to go ahead and sell out for us a little bit.
Okay, so we have a community Discord. The link to there is probably somewhere in the chat. Exclamation mark or probably something like that. Link to the community Discord is right there. Also have the speedrun.com page for the entire franchise. This game is listed over there, along with Sly 2, Sly 3, Sly 4, and a special Sly Factor boards, which consists of like trifectas and quadfectas of Sly Cooper releases. All of the games in the original trilogy, or then all 4 of the games in a row. Additionally to that, we also have a site dedicated to segments which are tracked, and there's a whole database for it, and that is called Sly Goals, and it's a way to find different streamers who stream Sly Cooper as well, since there are streamers, Sly Cooper games in general, are presented in the front page of that particular website.
So, right there I just did what a lot of people consider the hardest trick in the game. And I would have to agree, except for in this category. I think that the sprint that I did in To Why the Dragon with a really big super jump, I think that's a little bit harder. But effectively what that does is it skips a really long cutscene that you'll actually be watching here in about a minute. And it also skips the entirety of the Bentley Comes Through hacking level, which is the only hacking level in this game. And while it's actually kind of a cool level and a really neat introduction to how the hacking kind of works in the Sly franchise, I personally think it's a nice introduction to it. It's very, very long. It's about 2.5 to 3 minutes. So in any percent in all keys, we tell people that it's faster to, if you fail it, to just leave and just try the trick again and just keep doing that until you get it. Because odds are it's going to be faster than just doing the hack level. unless you were brand new and you just don't know how to do the trick yet, then obviously doing the hack is going to be faster than sitting there for 8 minutes. But you know, once you're like an intermediate level, I would say it's always worth it to just keep jamming attempts at this trick.
The reason why we entered this hacking level was explained earlier, so we have to get the percentage for unlocking the level, which is literally the only reason.
Yeah, a little weird quirk in the game. Unlocking every level gives you like 0.6, 0.7%. It's really a small arbitrary number, but it's a percentage. If I didn't enter this level when I killed Clockwork, you'll see that it would say 99% instead of 100. Obviously, we want all of the percents. So I entered the level, got the autosave, now I'm just gonna go back up here and do the sinking barrel level.
Final platforming level in the game, and oh boy, it's a good one.
Yeah, they really saved the best for last here.
Throughout.
No! Remo, I got greedy. Never get greedy, Chad. Never get greedy. It's fine, though.
I'm assuming jumping off that wheel onto the track above it is not intended.
Oh, no. There's a lot of things that you do in this level that are not intended. Oh, no. Which if I can stop dying, like a bumbling idiot, we can see.
This is a really challenging level overall, though. It has a lot in it.
Oh yeah, this is. I mean, I feel like we've said this a few times now, but this level it looks very, very easy, and to a certain extent, now with that trick that I just did, it is a lot easier than it used to be. But it's still very, very hard, and mistakes in this game and this level are they're just costly, which I think is what makes it so much fun to run.
And the run, addition to that, nerves factor for it as well.
Oh yeah, you're on a good run, you come into Hub 5, and some games have end games that are really easy and just kind of cakewalks. This game is not one of them. Despite having an auto-scroller and a minigame in it, well, 2 auto-scrollers and a minigame in it, you have one of the hardest tricks in the game in Bentley Skip, then you have Sinking Peril, which is one of the hardest levels in the game in general, and then you have the final boss fight, which has another one of the hardest tricks in the game in it at the very end of the run, so the run's hard from start to finish.
Now are you gonna go for Clockwork Jump?
I mean, we're at like 10 minutes under estimate, so I could try it once. Which is actually insane. I want to point out to the people that are watching the GDQ restream, right now, I have my splits going in the background so I don't forget routes. I'm only 2 minutes behind my personal best, and my personal best is very good. It's a very, very good time. Yeah, it's the world record. I honestly feel like I can maybe save like a minute and a half at most on it. So the fact that I'm 2 minutes behind on it in a no reset environment with the stress of chilling out with the GDQ guys, it's really awesome.
Yeah, no matter what happens at the end, this was a major success.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a good run.
Oh, hey, we got purple rings. Nice.
Oh, the purple rings, they are infamous.
Very infamous. So not only is this, part of the game at the end game extremely hard, but as you saw in the bottom right corner there, that ring kind of came back, and it's not supposed to come back. And if they come back in just the right spot, they will just kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just die. And it's really sad when you're on world record pace, and you just die.
And we're gonna finish off this boss fight hopefully with a platforming section.
Darn. I missed it. Sorry for the spoilers.
Well, I guess you can kind of guess what he was aiming there.
Yeah, so that's a really precise jump. You have a very... It's not a very specific angle, necessarily, but it's also really easy to mess it up. And not only do you have to do that, but you have to time your jumps properly. If you notice, just by watching, this game has very different double jump mechanics than you would be used to from most platformers. Your double jump doesn't really give you a lot of height, it gives you more distance than it does height. So you want to utilize that, space your jumps properly, hold the proper angle, time your circle at the right time, and do all of these things correctly, and you can skip the ending platforming section. It only saves about 25 seconds. Unfortunately, if you miss it, you have to do the entire fight again, which is about 2 minutes of time loss. And you saw I opened up the pause menu there. That's almost kind of reactionary. You actually don't want to load the game after you die there, or it will respawn the cutscene in between phases 1 and 2. So if you die, it's better to just land in the water, land in the lava, and just die. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do the trick. I'm not going to go for it again. We'll just be doing the basic platforming. Just because I have another 8 minutes to play with. I feel like the GDQ guys would be a little upset if I sat here and burned all of that just trying to look a little cool, so.
It's up to you, but I mean, I appreciate that you went for it, you know? Would have been hype if you got it.
Oh, yeah. This is another one of those tricks for me where I kind of go in and out of periods of being really good at it. For whatever reason.
You're gonna end up in this exact point where he was aiming in a minute, though. So we can just imagine this continuing from that point forward.
Yeah, just go ahead and imagine. Yeah, I did the trick! Oh my gosh, I'm so cool! Yeah, let's go!
Time is coming up.
And time is coming up now. Probably should have given a little more heads up on that. We were trying to be funny. Also, this cutscene is very, very loud. And it is not your browser.
Turn it down.
That is just
Thank you.
I had taken down each member of the
Thank you for the warning.
Raleigh,
Yeah. I'm actually going to lower it a little bit on my end, too. I hope that doesn't mess up the GDQ stream. I would like to hear myself think. But, honestly, a mid 152, I don't think I could be happier with a no reset run. That, I mean, and I messed up Clockwork Jump. Like, that's insane to me that I was able to do that. So I'm really glad that I got to show off an actually good run for you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do you have any
thank you.
shoutouts you'd like to give?
Yeah, I would like to, we kind of did it already, but to do it again, just give a shout out to the entire Sly community. We kind of touched on it, but I want to touch on it again. It's not just one person that, makes speedruns awesome, and it's a collection of people that, there's tassers, there's routers, there's people that, make setups for tricks, there's people that find the tricks, there's the runners that optimize the runs and give ideas. And that's not just for our game, that's for every game. I feel like people don't get enough credit for doing all of the kind of behind the scenes work, and it's just like the runners that are kind of glorified, and I really kind of feel sad for all the people that find stuff, because they just don't get enough credit. I would really like to give a big shout out to them for not just on our community, but for every speedrunning community out there. Another shout out that I want to do, that I meant to do on the actual SGDQ stream, and forgot because I'm stupid. I'm a bad friend. I wanted to give a shout out to we call him Homeboy Steve. Homeboy Steven. He's a developer friend from Sucker Punch that actually worked on the Sly games that we actually was able to get into contact to, and he's explained a lot about some of the later game systems. He didn't necessarily work on Sly 1, I don't think, but he worked on Sly 2 and 3 and knows a lot about that game, and he's helped us figure out some stuff that we wouldn't have been able to figure out without him. So he's a really cool guy, and Sucker Punch as a whole is just a great development team. So it's really awesome to see that they're as friendly as they are cool at making games and stuff. Is there anything anybody want to shout out, Remo?
As a Finnish native, I'd like to shout out all the people watching the stream here in Finland at 5 a.m.
I agree with this shout out. A lot of people in the Sly community are from Europe. I would say it's probably like a 70-30 split of Europeans to North Americans, and European crowd, you know, they watch any stream, really. It's crazy. They'll come out whenever it is. If there's some Sly to watch, they're gonna be there to support the runners, which is absolutely awesome. You know, I love those guys. Otherwise, you know, if you want, I think the Discord link was just posted again. Feel free to join. You know, the games, they look scary. Then you get into them and you learn that they are kind of hard, but they're very, very fun, and they're some of the most rewarding speedruns that I've ever seen. I think I mentioned this in the GDQ run at SGDQ. I feel like it kind of gets a little looked over, unfortunately, but definitely it's so worth giving a shot, even if you don't like it. If you like speedrunning, give watching them a shot, give running them a shot. Absolutely great games and absolutely fantastic community. Probably one of the best communities that I've ever been involved in.
100%.
All right. So if that's all of the shoutouts, I'd just like to tell people that once again this Wednesday we're gonna have the Kuso Grande Invitational. It's gonna be the grand finals of our 16-man double elimination tournament. If you're not familiar, it's a bad game video tournament. It's a lot of fun. So make sure you tune in this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Besides that, thank you everybody who supports Hotfix. We are funded in part thanks to subscriptions and bits. But we are going to host another speedrunner who's doing a run right now. So thanks everybody who tuned in. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday, but we're going to send you along. Why don't you go cheer them on, hope they get a BB, and we'll catch you on Wednesday.
Bye.